The Denver Nuggets officially have their 2024 Media Day. And y'all, there was a lot to tap into, from Coach Michael Malone to Calvin Booth, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and y'all, Russell Westbrook is officially a Denver Nugget. Y'all, there's so much to get into, so much to talk about. Let's get straight to it here at Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper. This is your team every day. Thank y'all so much for being here with us, y'all. The Denver Nuggets complete their 2024 Media Day, and there's so much that we got to tap into. But, y'all, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Now, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Y'all, so the Denver Nuggets, they get done with their media day, and y'all, there was a lot of information that was shared, and we got an opportunity to get started with Michael Malone. Now, obviously, this is the last time that we've seen them since the end of the second round when they lost after Game 7 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and there was a lot of disappointment. Jamal Murray had the injury. Jamal Murray then went and played the Olympics, didn't look great. We saw Nikola Jokic put up a dogfight versus Team USA. So this is the first time that we've seen everybody collectively together. And y'all, today was really good because you got a dose of information that some we were privy to, some we were speculating, and a lot of stuff we just didn't know. We opened up the conversation today, and Michael Malone is at the podium, and one of the very first things that Michael Malone talked about was the three-point rate. Now, last year, the Denver Nuggets were 30th in three-point rate. They actually had maintained the same level of three-point rate as they had the season they won the NBA championship, but the NBA took another step forward. Their rate doesn't increase, the league-wide rate increases, and therefore they're at the bottom of the league. But what happens is Michael Malone starts off by saying, after asked a question about the three-point percentages and three-point shooting, if Jokic, Murray, and Michael Porter Jr., if they all shot one more three-pointer a game, that would have moved them from 30th all the way to 15th. And so what you're kind of seeing right now is that there's this kind of philosophical divide that exists between where the Nuggets are right now and where the rest of the NBA is. And I think Calvin Booth actually really alliterated a very interesting point that we'll talk about a little bit later when we get to his segment. But Malone was pretty consistent that he does want to see Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr. put up a couple more threes, and especially from the guard and the wing spot, you just want to see more variance from that spot. He was asked directly about Russell Westbrook, and about Russell Westbrook, he says that there's an energy that is just different about Russell Westbrook. He can't explain it. Malone says that he has so much respect for his body of work and that the only thing he hasn't accomplished is winning an NBA championship. And he noted that Russell Westbrook was there in the gym, that he was working out and performing. And Russ, you know, he just has the kind of game that I think is going to make Michael Malone very excited. And one of the first things Malone brings up is his defense. Malone notes about Russell Westbrook's defense from last season. He says that Russell Westbrook is a competitive person. He has a kind of, I'm going to get in your S mindset, and he can close games defensively. You know, he notes for the Los Angeles Clippers last year that when Russ needed to be on the floor to close those games, he was the primary defender on the other team's best guard or wing player. He likes that about Russ. He likes Russ' grit. He likes the fact that he's going to play very hard. He likes the fact that he's an intense guy. He likes that he's reliable. You know what you're going to get with Russell Westbrook. And Russ gave us a lot of really interesting and key quotes later on that we'll get to, but Malone seems to be very high, I think, on what he's seeing from Russell Westbrook so far and how he's going to be able to fit into the system. But one of the things of note, y'all, that I thought made the conference today, he was asked about the shooting guard spot. KCP is departing. Now they're going to need to replace that shooting guard spot among the starting five. And Michael Malone, he states that Christian Brown and Julian Strawther will be competing for the starting shooting guard spot this season. And he also notes that Julian Strawther had been in the gym all summer. Now, he also said that about Christian Brown, but he wanted the people to know that Julian Strawther had been in the gym all year, that they had seen him working out, trying to get ready and get built for this next NBA season. Strawther talks a little bit later about this too. One of the things Julian says is that he didn't get a lot of a break last year from draft night until he got hurt to get a chance to kind of take the game in stride by stride and to allow for him to grow and to learn how to be an NBA player, how to fit into a system, how to make things work around him. And it was really just a very eye-opening conversation from Michael Malone, because I think for Malone to be able to say that the shooting guard spot is an open competition, I think that's news to some people. I think that's news to some people. I think that's going to change the way certain people are viewing the shooting guard spot. Now, there's a couple ways that this could go. The way that I'm kind of looking at it right now is I think that the way that things are going to be looking at is how do they integrate with the starting lineup? Who best complements, as Michael Malone said, what the starting lineup is going to do. Now, that's going to be interesting because Julian Strawther is a more natural offensive player than Christian Braun. He is a shooter. He obviously at Gonzaga was a dynamite offensive scorer, but he's not the defender and the physical defender that Christian Braun is. Now, Christian Braun, on the other hand, and Calvin Booth was also quick to note this, the Nuggets, people say the Nuggets don't have shooters, and, they look at AG and Peyton Watson in particular and say they don't have any shooters on the roster now with Russell Westbrook. But he said that Calvin Booth did. I want to take Christian Braun out of that conversation because he shot 42% above the break last year. So Calvin Booth and the Denver Nuggets, they do look at him as a shooter. But some of this is going to come down to how is he able to convert on some of those corner three-point shots. Because obviously, Aaron Gordon's going to be operating in the dunker spot. And so he's going to have a lot of responsibility to be an elite finisher around the rim. And so if that's the case, then that's going to put a lot of emphasis on Christian Braun's ability to connect on those corner three-pointers. And I think that's where Julian Strawther comes into play. Like, if there's a scenario where Julian Strawther is a comfortable defender and that he uses his 6'7" frame well, that he's able to get through screens, fight around screens, and he's even putting up like positive on-ball defense level value. And on top of that, he's able to be on help side, a decent gap defender where he's, kind of putting his hands in some passing lanes. He's able to get some deflections and some steals, which he did versus the Atlanta Hawks last year. Then, yeah, there's a very real path that Julian Strawther could be able to take a lot of these minutes as a starter at the shooting guard spot. But what I think could end up happening is, say Christian Braun is just not taking the leap necessarily that they were hoping that he was going to take offensively. He shot 8% from mid-range last year. Well, then, hey, how about in this scenario then? Julian Strawther, you get the start. You're going to get that scoring punch in there. We're going to see how we're closing, the first quarter and all that. But closing the second quarter, closing the fourth quarter, that might just be Christian Braun's time. It could be Peyton Watson's time as well. There's going to be a lot of things to really look out for, before they get to their first preseason game in Dubai next week when they play versus the Boston Celtics. But that was very insightful. And it was good to hear that for Malone, this is not a cut and dry decision. It's not just Christian's because he won the championship as the seventh man. It's not just Christian because he has the most experience, but rather it's going to be an open competition. And I think that's really going to make some very interesting conversations for the team as a whole. Malone also said about Peyton Watson that Peyton Watson should be living at the free throw line by attacking closeouts, and he should aim to shoot 35% from three this next season. And again, Peyton also got a chance to speak today. And if you've heard me at all, you have heard I said something similar about Peyton Watson. Peyton Watson has this unique athleticism that allows for him to be able to attack violently, to be a very strong rim finisher. But in transition, especially, his free throw rate was better than you would think it would be just because he's so athletic that he's just able to rise above or get to the rim a lot faster than you can typically as a defender. And so how do you utilize that? Well, that means that you're playing with the extreme pace, under control, obviously, but also you're utilizing your athleticism by making sure you're forcing the issue. Peyton Watson basically said that he should either be getting in transition an automatic 2, he should be getting free throws, or an and 1. Because if that's when he's using his athleticism, those are the things that are really, truly going to help him and the Denver Nuggets excel all the way across the board. You can tell the team is really excited about Peyton. Coach Malone is excited about Peyton. Calvin Booth is excited about Peyton. He's one of the elite wing defenders in the league, and they want to see him continue to grow in that area. But offensively, there's so much room for growth, and they were already so excited to see what he's going to do. And I think that there's going to be real opportunity for Peyton Watson as well as Julian Strawther and Christian Brown. But y'all, on the other side, we're going to get to some more of these quotes, especially Russell Westbrook, Nikola Jokic, and Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. here in a minute. But y'all, this is Locked On Nuggets. Y'all know what time it is. Y'all, one Caleb Willing passing yard gets you one win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks, because when it's gone, when September ends, you can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Want to play PrizePicks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. So y'all, make sure you visit PrizePicks and download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNBA on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Y'all, we'll be right back for more here on Locked On Nuggets. Y'all, we are back here at Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper. This is your team every day. Shout out to y'all. Make sure you give us a 5-star review on Apple. That way more people can hear about the great stuff that's happening with your Denver Nuggets, but also on YouTube. I want to see if we can get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of this upcoming season, y'all. Make sure you're liking and sharing and subscribing, getting people invested in what we're doing here on the YouTube side at Locked On Nuggets. But y'all, let's get straight to it. So back to the press conference. So one of the things of note is that Calvin Booth, when he was asked directly, how much influence did Nikola Jokic have in getting Russell Westbrook to Denver? And I thought this was such an interesting answer. Calvin Booth says that Josh Kroenke, himself, and Michael Malone collaboratively decided to bring Russell Westbrook into Denver, and that Nikola Jokic does a good job of not meddling, getting in the way of what's happening at the front office. And I thought that was really interesting, because per reports, it was very well known that Nikola Jokic had apparently talked to Russ and helped him to get to Denver. And he had even told Calvin Booth explicitly. But Calvin is insinuating that all three of them at the leadership level, Josh, himself, and Malone, were the reasons why he got here. Now, really, it doesn't matter how, but it does matter that everybody is so bought into this idea. When you hear Jamal Murray, when you hear Julian Strawther, when you hear Peyton Watson, when you hear Nikola Jokic, when you hear Aaron Gordon, everybody is sold on Russell Westbrook. And I think that's what people need to really buy into. Everybody, including Coach Malone, they're all bought into Russell Westbrook. And even so much as Aaron Gordon outright said that he wants to do what he can to give Russell Westbrook his NBA championship ring this upcoming season. Now, again, I think that's really important, because when you have a player that is publicly as polarizing for some, but really as respected and revered as Russ is, and I think just not just among players, but among fans and among some members in the media, including myself, who holds Westbrook at a very high standing. Russell is going to I think he's going to really influence this environment in some really impactful ways, and in ways that we can't necessarily foresee yet. But Calvin Booth also made another noticeable comment today. Calvin Booth says that the Nuggets have 9 guys in their guaranteed rotation that he thinks will play on any team in the league, but he describes them as 9 real guys, unless I misheard something. 9 real guys. And the guys, I presume, based on his comments, are Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, and then on the bench, Russell Westbrook, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, and Dario Saric. 9 real guys. So that seems to be in his brain that this is the guaranteed rotation that we have, which I also agree. I think Deron Holmes, had he been there, I think he could have been locked into that. I think that Vlatko Cancar is going to end up being more than likely the consistent 10th man when he's healthy, because I think his shooting and athleticism and his defense, I think all those things will aid the Nuggets in particular off their bench. And you just want to make sure you have some size at that 4 spot. And he's 6'8", he's a thicker dude. And so that's really should be able to help him. And I think having that kind of size and shooting, to be able to go into the lineup. And again, allow for Peyton Watson to play his more natural position, which I think is the 3-2. And then you get Vlatko in the game. He plays next to Jokic. You got floor spacing and athleticism next to Joker. And so I'm really curious to see kind of how that looks. But that's the Nuggets 9-man rotation. But Calvin Booth also had a very interesting segment on whether or not the Nuggets need more three-point shooting, or do they just need to focus on what they do best. And what he said was essentially that if the Nuggets shoot the same amount of threes as like the worst team in the league, and they beat them on any given night, then that's one thing. But the Nuggets, they want to maximize what they do well. They talked about Michael Porter Jr. shooting 55% from mid-range. He talked about Jokic having the best floater in the NBA. He just talked about the things that the Nuggets do well, that they already excel at. It's almost as if you want to continue to buy into those things and to feed into those things, as opposed to jumping the gun and then basically in this league being the three-point leaders in volume. And I think that's so interesting because it shows, I think, there is a ideology that Calvin Booth has in his approach to basketball. And what he said was the reason why he thinks that this should work is because Nikola Jokic is better than everybody in the world, per Calvin Booth. But what he also said is that the worst three-point shooting team in the worst team in the league with a lot of three-point shooting shouldn't be able to beat Nikola Jokic if we're doing what we're supposed to do. And I mean, if our timing and our game plan and everything is tight and we're getting to the basket and we're getting stops, you shouldn't be able to beat us because we have Joker. And I think that's true. And he's basically talking about feeding into your strengths. And I absolutely agree with that. But I'm also of the same mindset with Coach Michael Malone that you still need an increase in three-point attempts from at least 3 of your shooters, which is Jokic, Murray, and Porter. And then we'll see what happens with Russell Westbrook. There was a comment made that he might surprise some people as a shooter this year because of how many shots he's getting up and all that. I'm not going to get too excited about that. I think we have a lot of track record to show he's not like a really good shooter. But I think it's this juxtaposition of how do you maximize who you are and all the things you do really well that's better than basically anybody else. But then on the other end of this, how do you kind of also buy into this new era where the three-point shot is such a tangible difference-making machine, and that it helps you win titles. It can help you lose opportunities to play in a title game like the Houston Rockets, or can win you titles like the Boston Celtics in 2024. So very interesting comments from Calvin Booth all the way around. Russell Westbrook, he talked about playing with Nikola Jokic, how he's happy he doesn't have to have a game plan against him anymore. And when he did, you just basically would say good luck, hope he misses this and all that. One of the things that I thought was most fascinating, Russell Westbrook on playing with Jamal Murray, direct quote, "My job is to be able to push Jamal to be the best he can be and play at the highest level he can. He's an unbelievable player and still has so much room to get better in a lot of areas. And I'm grateful to be able to be here and help him along that journey and vice versa." Wow, interesting. Russ is the consummate teammate. He's a professional. He shows up the work. But on top of that, he wants to be a good teammate that's helping to maximize everyone around him, which is why Westbrook's one of the best playmakers we've ever seen. Because, again, his job and his brain has always been about how do I accelerate and maximize the pieces around me. And you can tell he's excited to play with Joker. He's excited to feed off that energy and see the kind of synergy to develop. But I think that this point to Jamal Murray is interesting because I think many players might feel this way, that Jamal's incredibly talented. He's incredibly accomplished, but there's just levels for him to get to. So how do I help him do that? And that's what I think is happening right now with them is I think that he wants to find out how Jamal Murray ticks, what he thinks about, what are his motivations, and then from there, how can I help him to reach that all-NBA, all-star level status that I can? And so I think all of that stuff is really going to help Jamal Murray in the long run and hopefully makes him a much better player, much more effective player, and really, I think, too, just gives him maybe a deeper sense of connection to the game. On the other side, we're going to talk about Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray, his press conferences are always very interesting. There's always some interesting takeaways, but we're going to talk about and more on the other side of Locked On Nuggets. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Y'all, we'll be right back for more here on Locked On Nuggets. What's going on, y'all? We are in the final segment here at Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper, your team every day. So, y'all, Jamal Murray, in his usual way, is not a super engaging person at the microphone. Really, the Nuggets only have two dudes. I'll give Vic Lombardi shout out for reminding me. I said one originally. I think they only have two guys that are like really microphone people. And I think that's Michael Porter Jr. and I think that's DeAndre Jordan. I do think that Aaron Gordon has a little bit of sauce to him that allows for him to be able to talk. But I do think Michael Porter Jr. is the yapper and DJ is the yapper of the group. And Jamal, he just doesn't have like a lot of flair at the podium, but I think it's purposeful. It's like he doesn't want to give too much away. And so that's kind of how the interview went today with him. But one of the things he says is that he's healthy and he's good to go. But he also said he might have a career in MMA after the NBA, but he's doing this, and this meaning basketball for now. So Jamal Murray, different aspirations in life, which is completely fine. I think some of this is just going to be about how do we make sure that he's getting the rest that he needs. He's getting the assistance that he needs with like time management. And then I think Russell Westbrook, is he able to step in at a high enough level, especially when Jamal's out, where he can offset some of the loss that you're going to get in those situations. But what I thought about? I think the lineup with Jamal Murray, Russell Westbrook, and Nikola Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr. is going to absolutely cook. Absolutely cook. And one of the reasons is you're going to have like two of the best playmakers ever, but then you're going to have another dude in Jamal who is just like legit, like a legit passer. And Michael Porter Jr. being able to space out the floor in that unit, I think is going to be really helpful, and especially for a player like Russ to give you opportunities going more to the rim and whatnot. So really excited to see what that looks like. Nikola Jokic takes to the mic. I'm not going to lie. Not a lot was taken away. One of the things that he said is, besides having, the great beard and all that, he was really excited to win with his teammates because he's known a lot of them since 13, 14 and all that stuff. But I think that we're in a situation now with Joker's next thing has to be, how many rings am I going to be able to stack? Calvin Booth, to go back to Calvin Booth, but in context with Joker, had a really interesting quote. And what he basically said is that Nikola Jokic has a prime of about a 10-year window. And his first year in that prime was the 2020-2021 season. And Murray got hurt. But he says that we're about halfway through, 5 years through a 10-year prime for Nikola Jokic. But he said it's going to be incredibly hard to win another title, which is true. Winning a title in any sport is always difficult, but especially the NBA. That's just the way it works. But I am curious to see. Hopefully they start off very well. Hopefully they start off strong. Hopefully they're able to take the months of October and November and December to set the tone for the rest of the year. But if they don't, or didn't, then we'd be in a different scenario. So I think that for Calvin Booth, man, it's just going to be a lot of Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown. Are they developing? Can they develop it? Are they getting better? The answer is yes. We're moving forward. But I think that's how you shape out the overall depth of the team, because let's say Peyton Watson is a 6th starter. Now all of a sudden it's Russell Westbrook, Dario Saric, and Julian Strawther or Christian Brown. It's kind of floating. You're going to be in a different situation at that point, because now the development is working, the process is working, and now you're able to get players to elevate their games to a higher level, which makes the overall team better. That's the goal. And Michael Malone also talked about that he had to have a little bit of a paradigm change, because the CBA and the way that it's affected the league, Malone is so worried about winning right now that he's sometimes not able to see beyond this game or this moment. And so therefore he has to look on a more long-term view of how do we make sure that we're building and developing towards the future and utilizing the entirety of the roster to help us win more championships. Malone also said today that the Denver Nuggets were a top 8 team last year in defense. He wants to be a top 3 defense. So meaning that he wants them to maintain a very high level of effort in order to make that happen. So that's another thing that's going to be important, is how are they able to protect Jokic and Murray in particular, to make sure that they're not overusing their legs and bodies offensively, but they're able to make sure they're getting everything else around it to kind of work together. That way the defense can have the energy and the resources to be able to be a top 3 unit. Because when you're playing that well at that level, you got to have like elite rim protection, elite switch help, and you got to have a very good, very consistent, high IQ team defensively. Now, the Nuggets have shown that for stretches, but to be able to do that for an 83-game season, that's going to be tough, but definitely something they might be able to pull off. So all in all, y'all, I think that the Nuggets are well-positioned. I would say that they're motivated. I would say that there is an expectation for them. I would say that they need to continue to find ways to utilize the entirety of the team. There's just going to be opportunity for them to excel and grow, but it's just going to look different maybe than what it used to, because you should just be able to throw KCP out there. KCP go solve the problem. But now, because the players are around them are younger, because Christian is younger, because Julian's younger, because Peyton's younger, it's just going to be about how do we figure out the exact combinations and to make sure everybody's where they need to be. And I think that Calvin Booth and Malone, as much as we have heard that they're not on the same page, I think they're currently on the same page and trying to accomplish the goal of getting some of this stuff done. But it's going to be interesting nonetheless. Like, there's so much that is at stake right now. Obviously, Calvin Booth bringing up Jokic's prime. Jamal Murray signs a 4-year extension, so he has 5 years remaining with this team at least. Michael Porter Jr., I think he has 2 years coming up after this. And then obviously, Aaron Gordon, who's eligible to sign a contract. And he even noted that it looks like the process is going well. He also wants to stay in Denver for a long time. I mean, that's just where we are right now. I think that the team is just having to answer like these bits and pieces of the question. But once we get the ball rolling come regular season, I think we're going to be able to see a lot and find out a lot from this team. But I'm really excited. I'm more excited than I was before the media day, because I think the vision between Booth and Malone is more aligned than initially realized. But I also think, too, I think the team is hungry. Like Aaron Gordon, was mentioning details. And obviously Aaron Gordon, he's changing his number to 32 from 50, if you didn't know. His brother actually passed and had like, a very, very terrific accident. And so we're obviously praying for him and extending our condolences to him. AG is a very well-loved member of the Denver Nuggets community. But, he's changing his number to 32. And, he's talking about, how do we make sure Saric and Westbrook, how do we make sure that they're able to live up to their ability, because they all bring something very unique. to the team that's going to help them to maximize their roster. How do you continue to find Michael Porter Jr.? Aaron Gordon said he's working on his 3-point shot in the offseason. Like, there's just constantly things that are evolving and changing. And so you have a core that's willing to do that, but it's just about having the coaching. And then I think having in place the bench behind it to be able to do what needs to be done to help you win at the highest level. So it's going to be really interesting, man. Really interesting press conference. Michael Porter Jr. Has some really interesting insight. Maybe for Swipe and Gripe tomorrow, we can get more into it. But y'all, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Nuggets. Media Day 2024 is officially over. Malone, Calvin Booth, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, Russell Westbrook, Dario Saric, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, Hunter Tyson, Julian Strother. We heard from them all. So we'll see what continues to happen down the line. But y'all, that's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets. This is your boy Swiper. See you on the other side.